Hello and welcome. Women constitute roughly 11% of the employed workforce, but represented, according to the Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, almost 52% of the jobs lost during COVID-19. So the larger question is, how could these jobs come back? But more importantly, could they be restored and rejuvenated through entrepreneurship and alliances of entrepreneurship? It is in this context that I am pleased to be joined by Madan Padaki, co-founder of the Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship and also CEO of OneBridge, who has been working on creating networks and cohorts of entrepreneurship, and with a very, very strong gender focus. The mission of GAME, incidentally, is to create 10 million entrepreneurs, of which 50% will be women, and roughly 50 million jobs by 2030. Madan, thank you very much for joining us. So obviously, COVID-19 has made the entire task bigger and perhaps more difficult. But tell us about the work that you're doing under this alliance and where you stand, particularly in the context of gender.
Thanks, Govind, for having me on this show. Appreciate it. Global Alliance for Mass Entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, is an alliance. Our idea and the mission at GAME is how do we galvanize an ecosystem to be able to create a lot of entrepreneurs who can create jobs. Right. So the whole idea of GAME emanated from the fact that India has a large missing middle of opportunity-driven entrepreneurs who can go on to create 5 to 20 jobs each. And we believe that's one of the levers for the growth of the economy as well as growth of jobs. And clearly, from a gender lens, we said 50% of those jobs and those entrepreneurs have to be women. So when at GAME, we've taken at an alliance level that we need to create 10 million entrepreneurs in the next 10 years, 50% of them women. We are doing a lot of work with women entrepreneurs on the ground through partners, of course. Specifically from a COVID angle, Govind, when we've done our variety of research with various organizations, we've found three things that are coming up as specific challenges during COVID. You know, whether you call it as a silver lining or a dark cloud, I don't know, but many of the women entrepreneurs who spoke to said, you know, COVID has not had that much of an impact because our lives anyway were difficult.
Right.
So piling on a little bit more difficulty on an already difficult existence, maybe they didn't feel the hit so badly, right? But having said that, one of the things we understood was that their workload at home went up. Kids at home, you know, people from other the migrant workforce that had gone out of the village have come back home. And we saw an increase in the number of hours that women were putting up at home, which also meant it impacted their ability to earn an income through entrepreneurial activities. So that's the trend that we saw. And the third thing that we understood from the conversations was that women have been forced to dip into their personal savings and put it more into the work space for the family, not just for their own work, than the male member of the house borrowing from personal family and friends. So the women also had to take a disproportionate share of the financial burden of the family to make both ends meet, right? So It's a double whammy in that sense.
Right. So, let me take you a step back now. When you created this, or when the alliance was created, the idea, I'm assuming, is that women as entrepreneurs would be more effective and efficient in creating jobs, not just for themselves but for other women as well. So, what's the thesis behind this approach, and how is that building up?
Sure, Govind. So one of the things, you're absolutely right. The thesis for women entrepreneurs is how do you get them to scale their enterprises, right? One of the approaches we're taking is to create a cohort-based approach where we bring together a group of women who will come together to be able to learn from one another, to get structured inputs, and can they show demonstrable growth. For example, in Bangalore, we've just launched, and in fact, we are launching it in a couple of days' time. As a formal launch, we are launching a cohort of 20 women entrepreneurs who run fairly sizable businesses, 60 lakhs and above. And we are putting them through a 6-month boot camp, which has elements of, how do you manage customers? How do you create your own capacity? How do you manage cash? So on and so forth. And this experiment will see whether these women entrepreneurs can grow disproportionately over the next 6 months. And we believe that by celebrating such growth stories And by bringing in all ecosystem actors, governments, financial institutions, market linkage partners, academic institutions, we should be able to spur more economic activity for women entrepreneurs to thrive, right? So the approach is to take a local ecosystem building approach where we showcase success stories of women entrepreneurs and inspire others to follow the same path.
Right. And this is, I mean, are there some industries where this approach is more conducive and it plays out much better, like food and education?
Exactly. So in our research that we've done, we've seen the following industry verticals where we are focusing on: F&B, of course, food and beverages, healthcare, beauty and wellness, education. These are the three sectors that we are focusing on. Of course, in our cohort of the first 20, we have folks from manufacturing, from floriculture, so on and so forth. But we believe that these are the sectors that women already exist as entrepreneurs. How can we build up their capabilities to grow in these spaces?
Right. So, Madan, I'm sure you are personally meeting many of these potential entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs who may be taking the first, perhaps most critical steps. What are you finding in your conversations with them? What held them back or what's holding them back? And what is the key thing that would perhaps propel them versus other kinds of entrepreneurs that you come across, particularly in an entrepreneur-rich environment like Bangalore?
Sure. What we're seeing, Govind, is a few things play out. One is the whole expectations of the women in the family and the society around her. So when we meet a lot of women entrepreneurs, they say, listen, I want to do it, but somebody needs to talk to my husband, somebody needs to talk to my parents, somebody needs to talk to our parents-in-law. So the first thing is that I think we have to create a lot more noise in the society around that, hey, women, there are several success stories of women becoming entrepreneurs, spending not just for themselves, but creating jobs for 20, 30 other people around them, right? The second thing is that there is a lack of self-confidence and self-belief, that it's very hard, I have to fight a lot of battles, so on and so forth. We are seeing that by just unlocking the self-confidence in them, they start to flower. And this, especially in our experience at Head and High, where we work in the deepest and the remotest set of villages, where we encourage these women to form collectives and form entrepreneur collectives. We're seeing that this is one big lever that acts well when you unlock their confidence and say, hey, if others have done it, why can't you do it? And the third thing that is coming about is some sort of a peer learning, peer support network. How can we bring a group of women together who are together through thick and thin, right? If a woman entrepreneur is facing a challenge at work, at home, can she talk to somebody in confidence and say, hey, I'm facing this challenge. What suggestion do you have? And we think that peer learning networks and peer networks form a very strong role there. Right. So these are some of the things that we're working on as we build out the whole concept of an accelerator at a local level.
Right, and I'm sure many would watch this conversation as well. So, how do you incentivize yourself to do this, Madan? When I say you, I mean your organization. So people also understand that you will be there when they need you, maybe later or down the line.
So from a game standpoint, Govind, this is our mission, and our idea is to build local capabilities and local capacities. Right? We clearly realize that game will succeed not as an organization, but game will succeed only if we operate as an alliance. So our model is to bring all the local partners together, get them to own this piece, so that eventually we don't have to be there forever. Right? And they all become a part of this larger learning collaboration action network. And what we are realizing at Game is that we need to create a platform where organizations can learn together. For example, there's fantastic things, let's say, happening in Kerala, but somebody is trying to reinvent the same wheel in Uttar Pradesh. So we see a lot of wastage of resources, time and money happening. Secondly, how do we bring the best of organizations to collaborate, right? One organization need not be good at doing everything, but can one organization focus on the training capacity building? Can one organization focus on financing? So on and so forth. And thirdly, as a mission-driven organization, We want to be able to shout from the rooftops to all the people listening there saying, hey, this will take a lot of shoulders to the wheel to make this happen. It's not one stakeholder or one ecosystem actor's responsibility. All of us have to come together to make this happen. And Game's objective is to be there as the platform for all of these entities to come together.
So, when you work or when you build and work with these networks of women entrepreneurs and, the peer-to-peer groups or creating those peer-to-peer groups, is India distinctive in any way, or are these challenges that you feel similar? I mean, cohorts in other countries also might face, particularly when it comes to gender?
From our conversations and research, Govind, of course, there are cultural nuances, not just in the country, but within the country itself. Each state would have its own set of challenges. But what we're realizing is that India is no different when it comes to the global the challenges faced by women globally, right? And we are learning from some of the best experts in the world who have done this in Africa and Latin America, and we are trying to adapt these solutions to the Indian context.
Right. And when, again, just to come back to your conversations with some of these women entrepreneurs, how are you feeling that they're different? I mean, what I'm trying to understand or perhaps derive from this is that is there something, is there something that takes some of these organizations founded by women entrepreneurs further in a way that maybe because of cultural reasons, because of maybe some other reasons, is distinctive, is different, and which is why maybe what we have in front of us is a much more powerful proposition than just seeding businesses and backing entrepreneurs?
Yeah, in a way, Govind, we are trying to answer these questions through this cohort-based approach that we are trying to take to say what levers. So there is a fair amount of research that we are backing this work with to say what will help women entrepreneurs move the needle the farthest. Is it the presence of a peer network? Is it the presence of mentors? Is it the power of technology that we can throw to say, hey, with this you can scale faster? Or is it just more open financial networks? So what we're trying to do as we talk about this research is trying to find out which are those 5 or 6 variables that seemingly move the needle the faster. And we want to then take this as a playbook and replicate it in a few other places and validate it out. Because today, from a growth perspective of women entrepreneurs, there's not much of actionable research that's been done in the country.
Right. And that I guess makes it an important input as well, that we need far more actionable research. So let me pick out a couple of other points. You talked about the social gaps or the social challenges, particularly when it comes to self-confidence. Tell us about policy. What do we need to do from a policy perspective to enable and drive this ecosystem much further or better?
Multiple levels there, Govind, and we've been having some conversations with a few policy folks as well. One is, of course, at a broader level, and then we can apply that to the women entrepreneurs as well, that we need to be able to make a lot of progress on the ease of doing business, especially for small businesses. See, the moment you ask a women entrepreneur or an entrepreneur to start formalizing their business, and then they look at the huge set of hurdles that come along the path, right? Not to talk of just compliances, but also the variety of harassments that come along with it. That's a big deterrent. In fact, I met a husband of a women entrepreneur who runs an F&B place out of her home. And I was having a chat with the family, and the husband was saying, you know what? I would rather have my wife just do 100 chapatis a day at home rather than she aspiring to do 1,000 chapatis, because then I have to think of Shops and Establishments Act. I have to think of Labor Act if I have to hire 10 people. And he went on to say, this is all a nightmare for me, and I don't want my wife to get caught in this jungle, right? So clearly, ease of doing business is one. The second thing is that in our research, we found that all things being equal, women were 2 times more likely to get rejected for a bank loan than a man. Mm-hmm. Right? And that anomaly we have to fix. It also means that for a banker who is sanctioning the loans, what kind of perspective or an orientation must we bring for him or her to be much more in tune with the challenges that a women entrepreneur faces and factor that into the loan process, right?
Right,
And
that's very
thirdly,
important. Yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, sorry, go ahead. Yeah,
No,
yeah, and thirdly,
I
I
think
think
that's a
this
very
has to be a
important point, Madan, on
hmm,
the challenges that women face when it comes to dealing with, let's say, bureaucracy or dealing with
correct.
governments, and
Yeah,
typically that becoming a male task for obviously for ease of
exactly,
friction.
exactly, exactly. Which also brings me to the third point, Govind, that I think we together, and not just at the policy level, but from a media, from a government, from stakeholder standpoint, we need to be celebrating success stories far more. We need to be talking about that it's all possible. Will we make it easier to make it possible? But I think we need to somehow in the minds of the world around us, the entrepreneur is usually associated with somebody who is so good and so high that it's not reachable. But nobody looks at the local beauty salon as an entrepreneur. Nobody
Right.
looks at this lady who's running a restaurant as an entrepreneur. Right? I think we need to change the role models and the definition of entrepreneurship itself and celebrate them much more.
Right. What's changed, Madan, with COVID-19? I mean, I know you did talk about the dark cloud versus silver lining in the beginning, but if I were to come back on that, are there newer opportunities, or are the same opportunities being viewed differently, or could they be viewed differently?
Across the board, we are exploring that. Of course, there are some sectors that have got hit very badly.
Right.
You take tourism, you take F&B, which are and a lot of women who depended on uh, and producing stuff for these industries itself. They've all got really hammered. On the other hand, the work I do with One Bridge in rural India, we are seeing a massive consumption growth happening there. We are seeing a large demand for logistics services. We are seeing a large demand for digital access. So I think what COVID will do will eventually do, will rearrange the equations in terms of digital access, in terms of uh, businesses that can grow faster and businesses that have to adapt to the new normal. I think as this dust settles, we need to be able to pick those sectors and say which needs to be supported, which needs to be strengthened, and which needs to be given a vitamin boost to kind of make it grow much faster.
Right.
And I think that's the opportunity we see today.
Right. And I know that you do a lot of work on the in rural India as well. And tell us about what are the differences that you see, and are there any are there any myths that you would want to bust when it comes to women and entrepreneurship and workforce between urban and rural India?
One of the most positive things we've seen in rural India, at least in this part of the southern and western India, Govind, is the emergence and the strength that self-help groups have had. I think SHGs and the National Rural Livelihoods Mission, the whole MFI-led approach has made women come together and realize that we're all in it together and we can succeed. I think the community that has been built through the SHG networks is a great strength to build on. The second myth that got busted for me is that every woman in a household in a rural enterprise is far more an entrepreneur than a similar woman in an urban enterprise, because the adversities they face at home and in their rural context is much higher than urban. So there is a strong entrepreneurial energy already existing in the women of the household. How do we leverage them to provide them opportunities to monetize that strength? Is the second part that
Right.
always fascinates me.
Right. This is very interesting, Madan. Last question. In your own journey, I mean, you've been an entrepreneur. You've sold a company, and you've now focused more on building these alliances, working with entrepreneurs, and of course, women entrepreneurs. What's the one or two things that you would want to empower your work and your mission in the task that you've set out on?
I'm a firm believer, Govind, from all the experience I've had the last 10, 12 years in this space, that there is infinite potential in every human being. It comes from self-belief. So one of my favorite all-time movies is the Kung Fu Panda, and I believe that for every paw, there's a dragon warrior lurking somewhere within. A lot of us die without knowing what treasures lie within. So a lot of our work is unlocking that confidence. Secondly, the mindset of an entrepreneurial mindset. How do you develop that opportunity and growth mindset to say, yes, here are opportunities that I can leverage on and start growing? And thirdly, how do you leverage that entrepreneurial energy into things that can benefit the community around them? I've also seen that out of the 6,000 odd entrepreneurs that we work with at OneBridge, a large percentage of them say, you know what, I will make money, lose money, that's fine, but help me to do something that benefits my village and my community. So I think if we can bring this whole transformation of the mindset, this unleashing the entrepreneurial energy, and channelizing this entrepreneurial energy towards a social good, you know, I think that's a mission worth spending your entire life on.
Right. Madan Padaki, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts. And I do wish you and your team all the very best in this very, very important task ahead.
Thank you so much, and look forward to continuing our engagement going forward. Thank you.
Thank you.